I need to do. Good. Hi everybody, it's Quinn from Fabricated Quilts. I know usually we aren't doing the face pose, you get to see my hands, but today I wanted to share my Blissful Spirits Scrappy Wedding Ring Quilt. And right now I've got really just a preview of it because it is humongous. It's a king-size quilt, so we can't fit it all on the design wall. This is about a little bit less than 1/4 of the quilt itself, and I consider this for my own thinking to be unit 1. So I put it together in this 36 units, and you'll see that the rows are not yet connected, and the reason for that is you're going to make a row all the way across and then connect them. So we want to make sure that we leave the rows in place before we finish them. We don't want to sew these together because otherwise that'll mess with your seams. So we'll do row 1, 2, 3 all the way across, and then you'll put the rest of the quilt together. So what we're going to focus on today is really just one block, and it's really just one unit, just like this right here, this piece. So there's 18 different blocks that are part of the quilt, and I've got a matrix that shows each and every one, and I've got great information about yardage, and it can quilt up quicker than you might expect, but it is an involved quilt. But once we show you the process for making the block, you can make it however you want, and you can vary it up into your own design, whatever you feel is most appropriate for you. So the hardest part of this quilt is right here, this piece. And it's not difficult to make it, it is a long cutting experience. So the quilt is king size, and there's 190 of these individual rings right here. So this is 1 and that is 2. So there's 190 of those, and each ring has 8 pieces. So that's a lot of cutting, and that's a lot of making sure that you have enough of the scraps of diverse colors in order to get this nice, pretty, and moving around bit of color. We also have a couple of different individual rings. You'll see right here we've done these as shades of gray. So these are all a specific color. They are gray. And then right here you'll notice that I've got a black graphic and a white graphic. And I divided those into 2 groupings where one side is the dark, and what that does is that kind of makes your eye move along that, and then the lighter shade will be on the opposite sides. So you can vary those colors up. I mean, you can make all those red, for example, if you wanted to. It's totally up to you. But what we're just going to show right off the bat is this initial ring and how to plan for that scrappy nature of it. So I guess Honey is telling me I'm not talking loud enough because I'm not quite close to the camera. But what we're going to do now is we're actually going to move to the workstation. So we're going to pick the camera up, and I'll give you a little view of the horrible sewing room. It's actually cleaned just for you. So give us a second, and we're going to take that and just follow along with us. Close your eyes. You might get dizzy. So there's the full view, right? We'll just kind of pan it like that. And you can see there's quite a few pieces also where you've got just plain blocks. And the plain blocks have some function. So let's just mention that before we move. Some of the functions of that is that this quilt has a lot of bias. So by putting some just straight cut squares in there, that's going to allow us to sort of control for that bias and restabilize the quilt in different areas. Because it's also a quilt with a modern graphic bend, we also want to leave room for amazing quilting. So there is spaces that are going to allow us to put a lot of different quilting in there. And that's why we've got those different units in there. So it takes a lot of fabric. It's more than 6 yards of white for the king size quilt. All right, so you guys want to see my sewing room as we walk along? I did clean it up. There's my little scrap bin right there. And that's something that I pulled out. So Patsy, I'm going to answer your question. This is not my new sewing room. COVID has kind of put the kibosh on our move for a little bit. And right now we're looking at moving at the end of the month. So we spent a lot of time over the holidays cleaning up, getting ready for the move. So let me show you some other important features of my sewing room. All this down here, every bit of that is bags of different colored scraps that are cut to different sizes. So like this box right here, this is 2.5-inch squares of every different color. They're already pre-cut. And most of them, I don't know what that's doing in there, but these are designed for 2 patches. And so I've got a whole bunch of those. And we'll talk about why those could be really useful for this quilt. So anyway, all my scraps are all bagged up by size, and they're all located under there. And then I do sort by size, so I'll show you that too. Because if you're scrappy, it's really helpful if you have bins that are sorted by size. So you can see these are kind of strips. These are some more random sizes. The purples, these are the oranges down there, and browns, and the purples are right there. And I've got a bin essentially for every color. So this is where we're going to be working right now. You can see I got a rotating mat, and I've got a couple units ready for us to go. And I'm going to put it on the camera stand so I can work hands-free. So give me just a second. Get ready to get dizzy one more time. I did try using a second camera today, but I just could not make it work. I still got some tech knowledge that I've got to conquer. So I should be close to the camera right now, so hopefully you'll be able to hear me well. Honey's monitoring, so if there's any issues, go ahead and let him know, and he's going to help keep me on track. This right here is the directions for Leonie West's double wedding ring. And I want you to look at it really quickly and notice that these rings are not scrappy, right? This is a piece that she's cutting in 2 units that is just a single piece. And I'm going to show it to you. It's this piece right here. This is number 4 right there. And we are going to use that, but I am going to try to make this happen for you more quickly. So let me show you the 2 scrappy pieces. Well, I guess only one. This is the one I want you to use, and this is number 7. I don't know, can you see it? Let's see if we can get you up on the camera right there. See how it says number 7? Now, let me show you the difference between number 7 and number 8. Number 8 on the end looks like this. It's got a little bit of a canted curve to it. And then this is right here, that's your little matching cutaway, right? And then on this side, it's just square. This has not been trimmed yet. I think that it is way, way easier to just go ahead and make all of the rings like this and not worry about that. Because what happens with this piece right here is if I cut it one way, it only goes one way. So for example, if I cut this, I cannot put it on this other side. So what I've done just to make my life easier and make me not have to guess which side I'm on, I'm just going to make 8 units like this. So let's talk really quickly about how my unit is a little different than Leonie's. She has amazing tools, and as I worked with them, I found that my thought process is maybe a little different than hers. So I re-engineered her tools to fit my style. And so that's what I'm going to show you. So if you've ever done any of her double wedding ring before, you're going to see that mine is a little bit different, but hopefully just as good. And hopefully it's going to make the seams a little less bulky, which if we are ruler working, we really need to do that. So this is what I want you to create. So I'm going to create 190 of these, and I'm going to show you how to do it. We actually are going to sew it in just a minute. But Leonie is creating them as these half units like this, right? And she's got her own seam pattern that makes these totally match up. I'll flip it over so you can see. So this is the way she does it, and she has all of the seam guidance in this quick little book right here, this handy book. That comes with it. And you can see that the seams are nested, right? One's gonna go out, one's gonna go in, and you could sew this block together really easily. But I'm going to show you my way, and the reason that I've changed it up is I don't want a seam right here, or right here, or right here.
So it's difficult for everybody to hear you when you're not behind the camera. The way the microphone there picks it up.
So anyway, we're going to go ahead and show you a simpler version of this that may quilt up faster. And it isn't that Leonie's is wrong. There's nothing wrong with it. It works amazing. I just want fewer seams and I want it to quilt up faster and I want it to fit my style. So we're going to start working on that and I'm going to show you first off this piece. How do we cut this piece? So because I'm a scrapper, I have a lot of pieces that are 1.5 inches, 2 inches, 2.5 inches, bags and bags of different sizes. The size that is appropriate for this cut, number 7, is a 2-inch square. If I lay this on here and I butt this black bar right up against it, I can cut this unit with very little waste. You're going to hold up here against the edge so that you can make sure that this is down, right? We don't want any rocking movement. We're going to hold up against there. Make sure that your black bar is right up against the fabric. I can turn it so that I can easily cut without repositioning. Oh, shifted on me. There we go. So I need over 1,500 of these units right here to make my quilt. A lot of them. So I'm going to just cut 1 billion of them and stick them in there. To make it go faster, I have a lot of pieces that are cut using my strip cutter and they're already stacked up. So rather than try and reinvent the wheel, I'm just going to take a stack that I already have. And if the edges are not clean, I can clean them up. So this is already set. It's set right here for that 2, maybe a 2 1/4, give me a little bit of headroom. And this way I can just make sure the edges are lined up. Having this edge all squared up right there, it makes sure that when I butt that piece up against it, I'm going to get a nice clean cut. The other thing that you really, really want is a brand new blade on your rotary cutter. Don't be trying to do this with a dull blade. It's really inefficient. So there, that gives me quite a few right there in that stack, and that's going to make it go a lot faster. Let me show you one other option that you have. If you are not a scrappy person and you don't have millions of colors, but you have some different 2.5-inch strips that have different colors and you maybe want to use those, you can get about 20 units out of a single 2.5-inch strip from a width of fabric. So really quickly, I've got a few of them right here. And again, we want to square up the edge, make sure. So now everybody's nice and aligned right here. Oh, we'll go this way. I missed my cut. Here we go. Let's cut the other side. That way we can make sure we have the right size with no waste. That's so much better, don't you think? All right, so now we can just start cutting these guys. I'll cut that inside first. Now we have a lot of pieces. So this is going to go a lot quicker. Each strip is going to give you 20. So if that's something that's a little bit easier for you, and if you're working with a friend, you guys can swap strips, and that way you can get a little bit more variety for your pieces. So the first piece of that is really just to cut 1,000,000 units of those. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but you need about, let's see, what did we say? You're going to cut, do the math for me, honey. What's 8 times 200?
1,600.
1,600 pieces. And just go ahead and keep going. And the other piece I want to talk about, once we've cut a bunch of them, you can start sewing if you want to, but I recommend that you don't sew all of them. And here's why. If I cut it in units, in groups, right, and I cut a big batch right here and I stitch all of these together, then these are going to be all the same color, you know, because we cut these from all the same pieces. So if I go ahead and I put all of them, all 1,600, and then I take it like this and I mix it up and make sure that I don't have, you know, 3 of the same color right next to each other, because that's kind of what we have there. That's what you need to do. You really need to mix that grouping up to help move those colors around, because I already noticed in a couple of my rings, I have like 2 of the same colors in the same block. Not just, you know, they're not in the same ring, but they have 2 rings that have the same color. And that would be something I would want to be different. So, you know, these are kind of close right here. These 2 are the same. There's not really a pink in there. So next time when I match this one up, I want to make sure that I'm putting some of the other colors in there that'll help offset the fact that that doesn't have all of the colors in it. So, okay, so we went ahead and we've cut a bunch of them. So we're going to transition to how do we sew it and how do we stay organized. So I'm going to shift my camera just a little bit. And
so before you do, could you show those rulers again, both the strip cutter and whatever the little piece cutter is, and say their names again?
All right, yes I will. Thanks for asking. So let me show this a little more clearly. Can I have that blue card, Daddy? The blue card right there. All right. So I'm going to hold this up and we'll show you this a little better so you can see it. So right there, that's the 2-inch square. This is part of the Westalee locking ruler system. And I know that I need about a 2-inch unit so that I can cut these. So I went ahead and I aligned this on this 2-inch mark. So whenever I cut the strip, it's going to give me the practical size that I need in order to cut these, and it's going to give me that straight edge. So if I have strips and I, you know, like right here, if these edges are not lined up, first I just need to get a straight alignment. So I'm just going to kind of trim off the edge a little bit using that straight edge so I can get that. Now I know that all those lines are all lined up. Once I've trimmed it, I can align this black bar right there, right on that cut where all those pieces are lined up. It'll butt right up and it's going to give me the exact size that I need. So right there, I can line this up and I can start cutting those units by just putting this number 7 unit right up against it. So number 7 is the ring location. Yeah, here, let's see. I think he's a little hard to see. He's not showing too good. There's the 7 right there. You can see he's hiding. But this is the units that you need to make the rings. And I'm recommending that you only make the rings with this unit. And I'll show you why as we get a little further on. So again, you could just line that up and you'll just keep cutting across until all of your units are finished. Okay, and then you're just, like I said, you're going to cut 1,600 of these, so it's going to be a busy cutting session. So I think that is the part that really is going to take the longest out of anything. Anything that we do with this quilt, that piece is going to take the longest. So let's go ahead and we're going to shift over to the sewing machine. So real quick, you might get a little dizzy. I'm going to pull it off of the camera stand and we're going to have to adjust it. So Sandy, number 7 is in set number 2. And Pat's going to hold the camera for a sec while we get adjusted. All right, we're going to put you on there. And so the setup right now, as we've said, okay, we have enough pieces. We're really going to go ahead and start sewing those together, and we're going to use our awesome grid glider, which is super important. So let me show you why that grid glider is so important. So when we sew these, we really want that scant 1/4 inch. We want to make sure that our ring is the proper size. Now, you remember I said we're going to sew units like this. We're going to sew a piece with 8 units. And all of our units are exactly the same. So what I do is I take my little basket, and I'm just going to pick different colors. And I don't care what color I pick. I want some contrast. I don't want them to be too close, right? So I could put these together, but these are kind of on the same color wheel. So maybe I'll do pink and yellow. You got it? Oh, no, that's not going to stay. All right, let's see. We need to tighten that up so we can make sure that camera will stay. How's that, guys? Can you let us know? Is that a little better? So Di Werner, such a good question. I'm actually using So Fine piecing thread right now. And that's what I'm going to go ahead and piece with. It is very thin, and I really like that. You could use an 80 weight also, but I think 60 weight is good. It's nice and sturdy. It has a little of a cottonized feel, so it's not as slippery. So you're going to line these up right exactly together. And this is a straight edge. There's no curved piecing on this. The way that these are, this wedge is wider out here, and these are just a straight. So I don't have to do anything fancy. I've got my 1/4 inch width guide. Let me show you one thing else that I want to show you. I don't want to choose anything that looks like this, okay? Number one, this is very poor contrast to white. If I put this in there, it's going to wash out, okay? It's just not going to really show at all. In fact, let me grab my piece, and we'll show you what I mean. So if I put this on here, right, and I put this on here, look at how that gives me pretty much nothing. Okay, it looks dull and it looks washed out, and I don't like it. So I'm not going to use any color that is kind of like this. No creams. If it's going to be yellow, it better be yellow. If it's orange, it better be orange. So I want a bright, vibrant contrast to my white. Okay, so on that same note, I don't want anything like this because I have a lot of black in this quilt. And if the black, if this ends up right against here and this is black, this is going to bleed in and not give that sharp definition of color. So I'm going to be really careful about selecting pieces that would wash out. This one right here, I love this fabric. I think it is so pretty, but it is a muddy fabric. All the colors kind of blend together, and I don't really think that that has the right feel of vibrancy that I'm trying to go for. So something like this, I'm intentionally going to pull this out and not choose that for my quilt. And then here's one last one. Anything that is muddy and has a lot of black in it like that, the white looks dingy because it's mixed in. And this right here is going to bleed right into the black as well. And this really does not have that nice sharp vibrancy of color. So if my purple, it better be like purple blue or really bright purple or maybe a light color. So model, answer your question. I'm using the Bernina piecing foot, which is number 57. 57 is with the guide. I also have pieced on my Janome 9450, and I used the narrow AccuFeed Flex foot with the HP foot, and it worked really well also. And I used the walking foot action. So many different options for you. So Vicki, I have the 7-inch locking ruler, but I actually started with the starter set with the long, I think it is an 18-inch strip cutter, and it has the bias half and quarter square triangles that came with it. Those are the first ones that I got, and I love those. They work really well. I ended up getting the smaller one because that is bundled in with the Fun and Fancy set, and it's good for some small uses like we just said. If you have smaller scraps and I'm trying to get a 2-inch or 2 1/4 inch piece, we do need a 2 1/4 inch unit for the caps of the unit. So this is the ring, and if it's rainbow like this, I identify it as RR, rainbow ring. This is the triangle curve, so BT is black triangle and WT is white triangle. And this unit right here, I call this the cap, and we have white caps and black caps, so WC and BC. And then this right here, this shape is the melon, okay? And in my pattern, I identify all the pieces, all the templates, and how to cut everything. And we're going to show you a couple more things, but we're going to make the ring first. So it does take a little time to put this together, but what happened is after I did a first couple of them, then I just started automating and doing a million. So let's go ahead. I want to show you one last thing before we start. When we're doing these, we are sewing many, many, many units, okay? So we're going to take this and we're going to create a leader so that we can easily cut pieces apart as we need to without having to pull that out of there. So let's go ahead. We'll put this under there. This is also going to make sure that when we sew, right when we get to our fabric, it's going to be a really clean stitch right away, because right now this thread is tethered to this piece. So the very first stitch on my new fabric that I put in there, it's not going to be loose. It's going to be nice and sturdy. So let's just start putting a couple of these in there. And I've also got my 1/4 inch line right here on my glider. And so that's another factor that's going to be really useful for us, because I can line that up and I can just follow that line right on my grid glider. So as I'm getting everything lined up, super convenient. So as I said, you know, mixing up the colors, trying to make sure we have two very distinct, different colors whenever we do our 2 patches. So the way I started doing it, and I'll make another note too. I can tell that I don't have my straight stitch plate on this machine, and I'm going to say, I think you should do that also. If you have a straight stitch throat plate for your machine, I think that you're going to get better results if you put that on there as well. And a good needle too. Make sure you have a new needle. Because we're sewing a lot of little pieces, we want to make sure that we're going to get a good strong stitch, right? This is that heirloom quilt. I have wanted to make a wedding ring quilt as long as I can remember. So when Pat and I got married almost 30 years ago, his aunt made a beautiful grandmother's flower garden quilt for us. So see how dark this one is? This is a really pretty fabric, and I like that it is got a lot of great color. I want to make sure to put this in a unit that has white triangles and don't put it on the end. So as we put our piece together, we want to make sure that this guy is like bound on 2 sides with lighter colors in order to allow him to shine. Sorry, random notification. Squirrel, that's what my husband says, because all of a sudden I realized, hey, I wanted to tell you that. Okay, so also let me show you something else. If I line up the edges right there and I notice, say that one is shorter than the other, if I can line it up and stitch it like that, like this is lined up here, I'll just stitch that and use the bigger piece. But if it's really noticeable, I'll just pull that piece out of there because it's not really worth it. It's too much of a problem. So these pieces are all in set number 2. And I'm going to comment on the sets really quick. I'll show you, I have all of the sets. I have all 4 of them. And the ones that I built with this quilt are 1, 2, and 4. Set number 3 has what I call like a center petal. And I'm not using that. What I'm doing is the 4-patch unit. And mine is black and white for most of mine on there. So when these pieces come in together, it's going to have blacks and whites like that and make a little graphic 4-patch. So I really thought that looked really spiffy. Okay, so let's go ahead. Let's sew. We got to sew a few of these so we can actually make something, right? So enough talking. Any good questions, honey, that we need to answer? No.
I don't think you've hit them all.
So I can actually look at some of the comments right now too as I'm sewing. So if you've actually used the Westalee wedding ring set before, you still might learn something new because I'm going to change it up a little bit. As I said, we're doing it a little different. But if you haven't, we can hopefully make it go really quick. So let's go ahead and put some more. You can see this is like the third one of these orange ones. So that's why I think it's important to make sure you're cutting a large grouping, because I think I cut like 3 or 4 different sets at a time. And then I realized that a lot of the ones that I had put together had a lot of the same colors in it. So right now you can see we got our little grouping right here, our little flags. And what I recommend in order for you to be able to count them effectively is when you get to 10 of these, then you snip it. Right? Just snip it off and leave all 10 of these together. And then what you'll do is you're going to add another 2 patch. So let's see, I saw Nancy Thorne. Where do we get them? So the templates are available through Sew Steady. I'll also be putting up my affiliate link, and you can also contact me if you're interested. I can help you as well. What I noticed, I was speaking with somebody last night, and for some reason, they're not listing properly on the Sew Steady page. You can't actually put them inside of your cart and pay for them. So I am aware that there's a problem with that, and I have contacted Sew Steady and let them know. And I'm going to go ahead and continue working with them. And as soon as we get that resolved, we'll put a link up on this post so that you can use the link. But you can also just contact me and, we'll work it out. So you need 1, 2, and 4. If you buy the complete set, it's $120. And what you're getting with that is you're getting Leonie West's Inspiration Guide, which is a large book that has many different design options and has different pictures and things like that. So that's the additional piece that you would get if you get it all. She also has a DVD that you can use that comes with that as well. So that's what that additional cost would be. But if you just want my pattern, which I'll be selling separately, and then 1, 2, and 4 is what you need in order to make the quilt. So let me show you another piece. Notice how this one is really white right here. So this is kind of unfortunate because as this sews in, you're going to get a little white corner right there. So I might be able to use this, but right now when I look at that, that might be a little risky. So I think we'll just leave him out of the pie. Let's grab a few more and then we'll get our units in there. Oh, see, I got some already made. All right. And color-wise, what I did is I kind of stuck to some basics. I have red, orange, I have yellow, green, and blue, and then within the reds, any pinks were a go, any pinkish purples were a go, and any teals or lighter blues were a go. I tried to keep all the yellows very sunny. There's not a lot of variation between the yellow colors. And the purpose of that is I really want the yellows to be vibrant. See, like that's not quite so vibrant, whereas this one's pow. So I tried to keep them more like this. I know, I'm sewing along, but I'm sewing and talking, so I'm not very efficient. All right, let's see if we can get at least one of these rings done, right? So once you get enough of your units and you start cutting these, I'll kind of scoot these over so we can show you what we're going to do. You're just going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I need one more. Okay, so we'll sew one more and then we'll have 10. Why 10? I'm recommending that you're going to make 200 rings. And if you count, if you have them by 10 units, then I think that's a much easier way to say, okay, I have enough. I've done whatever I need to do. So this is my little scrap piece that I'm going to stick in there to hold my place. And I'll cut the other scrap off of here. And now I have these 10. And when you're doing that, what I'm recommending is you're going to maybe take your first batch of 10 different units like this, and you want to match them up with 10 different units from the later part of the batch, which may have different colors. And that way you can help vary that up. So I have, somebody just asked if I have pieces that I'm not going to use, like, I have some that are cut. I don't know. I'll just stick them in there. I might end up cutting them back down because I even use like 1.5 inch pieces or 1 inch pieces. I have some small scrap bins, and this could just be recut down. And if it's too small, then you can just fold it up and use it as a leader. So there's lots of different things we can do with those pieces. Okay, so we've got this right here, So let me show you what we'll do next. We would go ahead and, like I said, match it up, and you'd get 2 patches, and then your 2 patches will match up together to be 4 patches, and then your 4 patches will match up, and there'll be 8 patches, right? And so eventually you'll end up with enough of these. That's what you need to have. So let me show you the last piece. We just showed you that 2 of them were already cut with unit number 8, right? See how this is already curved? What I want to do is I want to build all of this, and then I'm going to cut all the edges. So let me show you how we do that. How do we cut it? Since it's already stitched in there, how do I know what I have to do? So let me get my cutter and we'll show you. So we'll scoot these out of the way. Now, we talked about, unit 8 is the piece that has the curvature in it, but there's another piece that also has a curve. So let's see if we can get a better view for you there. Okay, we showed you that Leonie has that full-size ring. This piece right here. This piece has a seam allowance on it. Let me show you. See this line right here? That right there, the white line, that is the seam allowance. And this right here is the cut piece that I need in order to, curve that piece on the end. So if I can line it up on the white line in the center of the ring, then I know that my ring is the correct size. So here we'll scoot it out. So I'm going to line up the white line right on that seam, and I can see I need to adjust that just a little bit. And now I can trim this off. And if for some reason, like my ring isn't the right size also, then I also know that it's not the right size, because sometimes that does happen, like if your seam allowance is not correct. So I'm lined up right there. So I'll just kind of hold that in place carefully. And now I can cut that and get that ring right in there. So this little guy, he's telling me that maybe this is not a good size ring. So I wonder if that's why I didn't stitch him in. So we'll pull him out. Let's show you one more time. Most of the time they're good. I've been pretty careful with my seam allowance, but if you notice that that is not going to fit, like this one will fit perfect, right? We line that up. See how I can cut right there and I can get that full shape? That tells me that this is a good piece, that I know that this is the correct size. So do I have to do that with all 200 units? Yes, I do. It's the same though. What I liked about this method, instead of cutting the number 8 can only go one direction. So now I can put all of these together any direction I want to, and then when I'm done, then I can cut the curvature in. So I don't have to worry about, does this piece fit only on the right, or does this piece fit only on the left? I can just cut 1,600 of the exact same size, and then when I'm done and I've pressed them all out, then I can just cut in that little curvature that I need to have. So that's pretty convenient as far as not having to worry about, does this piece only fit on the left or does it only fit on the right? And we're making the whole ring, and then when you press it, let me just flip it over, just press them all one direction. This isn't going to matter in terms of how everything fits in. They can all just go the same direction and it's still going to work out. Yeah, Sandy, these are my directions, and you'll see in just a few minutes, I'll put how many pieces. Mine has far fewer pieces, and you're going to find that maybe it's goes together a little faster. Okay, so this way, I don't have to cut some this way, and I have to cut some that way. Mine, I can just put this on here, and when I'm doing this other side, I can just flip that over. I can line the same line up, and you can see this one is already cut perfectly. the benefit to this is it's also a double check on size. If I trim this off and say maybe this seam was a little bigger or not, then I can trim in a little bit more. That this will also make sure that I'm accurate for that half of the unit so that I know that this is the proper size. So there's a little bit of redundancy there, you know, as far as cutting, but it does have a purpose of making sure that everything is going to fit exactly, and then you can also do 8 and 8, you know, units together and just get them all knocked out really quickly, and you don't have to worry about which piece goes where. Okay, so right now we've got a couple of these. Let's see if we have one more. I think we do. All right, so let's show you the next piece. So the next part is, once we make a billion of these, not a billion, but a lot of them, we're going to start making the melon and the triangle. And I'm going to show you a way that you can actually do both of those pretty easily, pretty fast, with very little waste and a very single measurement to worry about. It's only just one size. Alrighty. So just for your purposes right here, I'm going to line this up, and I would use my ruler and I would line it up on 7.5, and I would cut that. And let's see if I can, well, let's see, we might have to do it where I can get my hand on it. We'll do it this way. We'll line it up right on the line, and we'll cut it 7.5. All right, and what am I doing? I'm going to show you just a quick and easy way to get the pieces that you need in the right amount and the right orientation, and it'll go pretty quickly. So let's make sure I'm on the right line. All right, and this is already, the strip is 7.5. Okay. And the one thing I need to do to prepare this is I want you to take this, and I'm going to go ahead and use my bias right there and press this fold in here. And I've got mine real close by, so I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick and get that set up. So if your square is a little wonky, like it looks like mine is, I can tell because the edges are not real clean right there, just line up one side, and that'll work for the moment. All right, and what I would do is, one with the fabric strip is going to give you 5 of these units with some extra, and we'll use the extra for a different purpose. It's not going to be thrown away, it's going to be used for a different shape. But you can make a whole bunch of these. So the quilt does need quite a few of them. So I know it's maybe a kind of a lot of work to put this crease in here, but you want this crease. It's going to be super helpful, and I'm going to show you. So go ahead and actually make sure that it is a really strong crease in there, and you know, make sure that it's pressed in there really well. We want that. We need that for our purposes. So let's flip it over. Now, let me show you the next unit that we're going to cut. So this is the triangle unit. What was that question? How many, what?
How many quilts have you made altogether?
Oh, I have no idea. Too many to count, Cindy. Many, 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 many.
Closets full of them.
Okay, so this is the piece that we're going to work with next. And the way that Leonie cuts this is, you know, this is a straight of grain right here, and you're just going to butt that up and you're going to cut it. We're going to do something different. I explained that I want fewer seams, right? So this is the unit that we have right here. She's cutting this piece right here. But I don't want a seam right there. I want to reduce that. So I'm going to show you by putting this on here. This is the bias, and this is a 45-degree angle right here. So if I line this up, this edge right here is all butted up together, and I'm going to take out the seam allowance right there. So see how this is outside? There's a line right there. That's the seam allowance right by my finger there. And I'm going to remove it. So let's see if I can flip it. Maybe you can see it better this way. How's that? Okay, you'll see that I'm going to line this up right on the seam allowance right there. And the white is going to butt right up on the edge of the fabric right there. Okay, so I have to rotate it a little bit more so I can cut it. So cut this part first. Okay, and then you'll cut this little edge right there. You don't want to cut down too far because you're going to cut two pieces. So let me just pull that out. We didn't quite get it all down at the bottom, so I'm going to make sure that I got the rest of it. Alrighty. I'm not going to try to cut that off. I'm just going to leave those. So this is a, camera issue. If you're on top of it, you're going to get this piece that's going to look like this. So let me just scoot this out of the way. Now we have this piece, right? And we have the ring that goes like that. Well, this fold right here is going to match up exactly on this seam allowance, so we want that. We don't want to get rid of it because that's the marker of how this is going to fit. So we can make all of our rings, and essentially we can sew all of our triangles on, however many black ones we need and however many white ones we need right off the bat. And I'm going to show you some of those real quick. I've got some black ones as well. We'll stitch this one so you can see the alignment and how to pin it. But this is what you need. You need so many of these. And now I don't have a seam right here in the middle, and this is going to fit this perfectly. And I have an exact alignment where I can pin it exactly, so it's super convenient, and then it's reducing bulk here at the corner. Instead of 8 seams coming in right here, we're only going to have 4. And that's really a big difference if you're trying to ruler quilt. So I wanted to just share that with you, and I'll show it up close one more time. What you're doing is you're aligning your fabric right on that, like that. So you're going to butt the edge of your fabric right down here on the bottom, and you're going to line it up. And let me show you one more thing. So we've shown you this, but this is the scrap piece, right, that we've already cut off of. Okay, and notice how, remember I told you it's a little bit wonky? Well, let's go ahead and we'll fix it, and we'll just line this up, and I'm going to press it again. So this is the side that was wonky. I just am going to readjust the bias and make these edges match so that I don't lose any fabric. So let's press it. And that way this fabric is not wasted. It's totally going to be used for the other one. Each block, each ring block has to have 2 of those double triangles, and it has to have the melon in order to be created, right? So we're going to fix this, and we're going to trim the other triangle right out of this same exact piece. So this is the straight of the grain right here. This is the 45-degree edge. I can just flip this over and use it upside down. We're going to line it up right on that fold right there. So let me make sure I can get it. I'll scoot these over. I need to be able to put enough pressure on it to cut safely. All right, so here we go. And now I can just sort of cut that edge all the way off like that, right? Okay, so there's my other piece. So now I have 2. And then what am I going to do with this piece right here, right? This is the middle of the block. So we got these 2 with the perfect seam alignments. They're ready to go, ready to be sewn. And I'll set them aside. This is not wasted at all. This is the critical piece. So let me show you what we're going to cut next. Just like we did with our triangles, we don't want a seam in the middle right here. Okay? We don't want to have a seam right here. We have a full ring, so we need a full melon. How do we get that? This is the shape right here. And notice right here at the bottom is where the seam allowance is for the melon. this is what we want to remove. We want to put our fold right on there. Well, look at this, guys. I can line it up right there, right on that fold. And I have just a little bit of waste, but not very much. Just get that off of there. And if I have my little spinny thing, I love that because then you can, adjust the hand position by rotating it and the ruler doesn't move, cutting in that little flat and cutting the rest of the ring. Okay, and then here's your melon right there. And this is all bias right here. And that straight of grain is right here on the end and right here on the end where you'd want it. And you're going to be flanging the ring to fit on here, so you want this part to be bias. So when we set it up, let's go ahead and lay it out for you real quick. Now we've got a ring like this, right? And the ring on this side and the ring on this side. So we're still missing a couple pieces, but now you have no seam here, no seam here, no seam here, and you have a really, really clear guide marker of where you're lining up each of these pieces on the ring, exactly in the middle. And let me show you one more thing. I want to show you something that I did, and that's how I figured this out. So I was trying to cut my graphic rings. So like we explained that we've got some different colored rings that are black and white. I'll scoot this over. And I wanted to cut them, and I would have had to cut 2 pieces, for example. Or let's say I maybe had something that looked like this, and I had to cut 2 different units, and I had to sew them together. Well, what I found is you end up with a weird seam, The curvature is different, the pieces don't match, it kind of ruins the visual pattern there, like it might be like that. And visually, it just doesn't look as good. And I was trying to think about how can I cut this instead as 1 unit so I don't have that seam problem. And so now, let me just put this back up here. Here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and all the pieces in the ring, which is another 16. That's 32 pieces per unit. And by just cutting the way that we did, we are reducing that number of pieces. So somebody just told me like, oh, 1,600 pieces. Dee, I'm going to answer your question. Yeah, that's a lot of pieces. And I remember way back in the day when I was first quilting with my friend Alice Ridge, who I called a fearless flyer. She was like, well, yeah, let's just sew it. We'll just sew anything. And I was like, okay, if the pattern says cut 200 of anything, I'm out. I'm not doing it. But I already have thousands of little pieces at 2 inches that are in my box. I already did cut thousands of them. And this is a quilt of a lifetime. This is not a quilt of a weekend. Although you could possibly do it, but it might kill you. It's the idea that this is something you're creating as a life heirloom, something that would be potentially handed on. This is not really that quilt that I consider to be the casual quilt, and I just want to make one. And the story behind these type of wedding ring quilts is, if your daughter's getting married in 6 months, do not promise this quilt. Okay, just don't do it. You don't need that kind of stress. But, if you're making that quilt for your grandbaby, who is maybe 14, yeah, go ahead, go for it, and get them in on it. Make them sew some of it. You make them help out. So as I told you, this is a lot of preparation of fabric. You're cutting these squares at 7.5. You're going to get 5 out of a width of fabric, but right away, I can tell that if I need this many squares of, rings, I'm going to need this many squares of 7.5 inch in order to make the triangles and the melon. And what you saw is this is the amount of waste that you're going to get essentially for each one of those. That's what you're going to get. Now that is some waste. I'm not, blind to that, but you're going to have to trim anyway. If you have any curve like this, you're going to get some waste, and the way that we're doing it, you're going to get less. So that's just a really great way that you can minimize any loss of the fabric. So let's show you what's next, and we need 2 more units, and we'll go ahead just for grins and we'll put black caps on there because I have a lot of black scrap already. So we'll line these up and just keep them. Don't get rid of these folds. You need them. You need them. So just keep them, handle them gently. If you struggle with bias, it is okay to best press all of your background fabrics like these before you ever start cutting. Go ahead and take your yardage, best press it, and then you can just go ahead and cut them afterwards. And that'll help to stabilize this so it doesn't get pulled out of shape. But always with the bias edges, right here and this entire piece, you want to handle it very, very gently. Okay, so we'll just set these aside real quick. And let's get our scraps out. And then here's the other thing. We told you you're going to sew all these triangles on there, right? Don't press anything. Just leave it like this. We'll need it to go a certain way when we put things together. So when you make this part and you get the triangle on your ring, just leave it. And again, I did these in units of 10. 10 with white, and then however many I needed. You need about 200, as I said, with the white caps, and then there's another, 35 with the black. So that way you get very little waste, and it's really easy to calculate your yardage for that. Okay, so let's get our black out. Because we had fewer black, I have some bits of scrap left over from the black. In order to cut the black, the caps, you need about a 2 1/4 inch unit, right? So here, I can tell that these are already straight edge. So I can line these up together nicely. I might even press them if I felt like I needed to. And the piece that we're going to use is this one right here. And I want you to understand that this is a straight edge and so is that. So if I'm flipping it over, it doesn't matter. It's symmetrical. So this is not on the fold. You're just going to cut this regular. Just line it up right there with the black bar right on the edge. Here, I'll scoot up a little bit so you can see. Woo! Knocking things over. All right, so we've got this lined up. And, this is a straight edge. If this was a clean edge already, you could even just butt it up right there. But I'm not sure if it is or not. So cut that piece off. Make sure it's removed. Cut this one. And don't go too far because this essentially is that 2 1/4 right there. So we just want to get this part off. And you can also cut reverse like this. If you feel comfortable, we'll get that guy off. And then cut that little flat piece after. So this is what you should end up with. And that's the 1/4 inch right there. This is a matching section. So let's go ahead. Now that we have all of the pieces, we're going to start putting this together and show you how to pin it for maximum effect. And if you guys have worked with me before, you know that I love bonbon time, right? Don't you guys know that? So this is also something that you can do with bonbon time. And I don't mean that you made a mistake. What I mean is when you're sitting around, you can pin. Get a billion of these pieces pinned with a ton of pins. And then when you're ready to sew, just take that little basket of stuff and you can bring it up to the sewing machine. So let me show you the path real quick. We need to have things go in a certain way. I have 2 different pressing modes, and what that allows is that allows your seams to nest. And I'm just going to show you one of them today. And I call them the X's and the O's, right? And the reason for that is, of course, because it's our wedding ring quilt. but we need to know that we have two different modalities, right? So we're gonna lay it together like this. And the first thing we do is both of these have to have these triangles put on. And so I'm gonna show you how to pin it really quickly. Flip the white over, and both of these have a flush edge right there, like a squared off edge. Take the pin, and you're gonna weave it through to get the edges to line up. It's like a little basting stitch almost, because it does have to flange a little bit. So you're gonna hold that in place like that. Actually, I think I did it upside down. And take this one and see how this piece has this little flat tip? You're gonna line those up, get those aligned right on the corner, and then let this piece flange right into itself. Don't worry about that little tip right there. As long as the edges match, that's what we're looking for. We want the ring to be on the top, okay? So we'll flange that. And then the last piece is the center of the ring. This seam right there has to match up right there. So let's look at it from the front. That little fold that you made, he's gonna be right in the center right there. Go ahead and pin just a tiny bit. We don't want a deep bite of the pin right there. If you take too deep of a bite, you prevent these sides from working independently. Let's see, what was the question? Have you
ever used Wonder Clips instead of pins?
I don't recommend Wonder Clips for this because you really need the pin to be a base right here. See how it's woven through? This is curved right there, and we're forcing the edges together right there. So you really want the pin. And here, I could use the Wonder Clip, but I don't want any slippage. I want to put this pin under the foot a little bit so that it's holding that, and then I'll pull the pin out. So let me show you real quick as we're getting going. We told you we want to have our ring on the top, so let's adjust our camera a little bit. All right, let's get you guys over towards my sewing machine so we can get a little better view. All right. So as we line it up, let's see if we can, this is the part we're going to have to flange right here, this part. We want these to match up. And what I think is so great about Leonie's system is they do so easily. It's like a magic. So let's go ahead, we'll take a few stitches. I want to get my needle anchoring those right in there, and I want my needle to stay down. Once I've got that, I can pull this out, and I want to show you something that I'm using that is, it's not our Sew Steady stiletto. This is an actual nail tool, and it has that sandpaper edges on it, and that's going to be useful if we need to pull a little to get pieces to line up, then we can do that. So it'll grip just enough that we can get those pieces to behave. So a little bit at a time, right? And then do a little bit more. And you can just kind of put a little pinch right there, a few stitches at a time, keeping them right up against your guide. And then we'll get these last little bits. So you can see that pucker? It's going to go away. Watch. So, and see right there, maybe it's not quite flanged enough. Then I can use my little tool right there, kind of even it out. If you have a knee lift, you should definitely be using that. It's really helpful for this. And we want to make sure that right at the middle, we are definitely not pushing any fabric from the middle over to the other side. So see how I'm like underneath there, and I can straighten out that little bit. There was a little pucker right there, but it's not stitched in. It's just that the fabric needs to kind of go on the behind the needle area. So we'll just keep going. There's my pin. We can pull that out. He's held that centerpiece right in place. And then getting those edges lined up. So it's okay, just go slowly. You don't have to go quickly. Curved piecing like that, you need to just give yourself time to get all these parts lined up. Ooh, I think my pin's going the wrong way. Yes, he is, darn it. I don't know why he's going the wrong way, but I'm gonna put him on this side. So I'm just holding those edges together because I need to be able to use him to help keep those edges lined up until we get to the end. So here, see how they're lined up? I can just kind of hold them in place with my finger and just follow my 1/4 inch guide right there. So I can't just rip through this like a billion miles an hour, but it's not complicated. It's just going to take a little bit of maneuvering to get that. Curve piecing, I think sometimes we're afraid of that, but this particular one, it's really, really shallow. So I'll just see how I just moved that fold and now it lays flat, right? And here, as we sew in, I'm just going to keep it aligned right against my 1/4 inch guide, get my fabric close to that edge, and as it stitches in, I'll pull this out. And the presser foot's going to hold that last little bit in place. Right, so we have one more. So let's see, we'll do this other one too, because we got to be able to put it together for you. So line it up right there in that center position, getting those fold lined right up in the middle, and just put a tiny little bite of your pin right in the center. And then we'll put it under just like this. This is where it'll start, so we'll have the first pin coming out this way. So we'll just use our fingers, kind of get it adjusted, and put that little weave in there. So that's like that little base to make sure that those initial stitches are aligned and held together just like that. Okay. And then we want to go ahead and we'll set the other end too, but I'll kind of get this in here just to hold it. So here's the last part, and we'll line those up as well. And then I'm going to make this pin hang off the edge because this is the one that we'll just pull out as we get to the end. So a little bit of weaving right there to help everybody stay in their place. And then we can start going. And this one actually even just seats already pretty well. I mean, he's almost right in place right away. So just 1 or 2 stitches, then we'll pull the pin out and just let it stitch. And I'm going to kind of rotate this around. That'll help me. So I'm actually kind of going curvy like that. And that's what's going to let the correct portion of the stitch get right under the foot. And then when you kind of see how it's already very flat there, as we get to the curve right in the middle, let the pin right under there so the foot can hold that, and then pull the pin out. And then we'll just get a little bit of this lined up. And if we need to, that's what this guy can do. He can just help give a little bit of pressure to get those seams lined up. And then we'll just flange this and make sure that we're aligned to get this last part. And, you know, as soon as you see if they're not lined up, just go ahead and smush them a little, get them to line up. And here, see that? I can just lift this up, and that excess fabric, he can actually just go to the back, right? So if you have your knee lift, that's really convenient to kind of remove that little float, that little bubble. And I'm right near the end, and I'll hold on to this, and it'll just sew right through to the end. And then I did these, you know, in groupings of many, 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 many at a time. So I had done all of the cut work in advance, and then I was able to just sew a ton of these. And I have in my pattern, it says how many white triangles, how many black triangles, how many rings, etc. So you'll be able to do that. And like I said, don't initially press this because some go one way and some go the other way. So we'll talk about that in just a minute. Now, right here, this is the next step. We've got both of the triangles, and this part only goes on one of them. So let's do the X's. Okay, so inside of the pattern, I've got like a handy dandy guide right here. Let's see if we can get this to show a little bit. I've drawn out the seam guidance, and it's kind of got, this is on paper, but what I recommend is either printing that out or making a big size of it and then actually having this when you're pressing, because I've sorted it out by which units have the X press and which have the O press. And that's what's going to make all of the blocks fit together really nicely, because everything is put together in units of a 4-patch. And so you have 2 X's and 2 O's in each 4-patch. So for us right now, if this is how we have everything lined up, let me cut that little guy off. I'm just going to scoot all this stuff off of here so that they're not in our way. And you can just lay this right next to your workstation, and if you know that you're making X or Y or whatever, X or O, X's and O's, hugs and kisses, then you can just follow the guideline and just have it right next to you. So right now, if you see right here on these pieces, this triangle seam is going to need to go this way, following these arrows right here. And then on this one, it's going to go towards the ring. So I would press both of those, and I'll go ahead and I'll do that real quick so we can move forward. When you're pressing these, you do want to be a little bit careful and not stretch anything right here. This is straight of grain on this edge, but at the same time, we just want to be careful. We want to maybe finger press this a little bit right here to make sure that this is open. Just do a little finger press with your nail, but not pressing, like smushing everything out, because again, that bias can distort, and we want to prevent that. That's going to make the quilt go together so much easier, especially since we have a lot of pieces. So here we'll just press this one out, so I can just use the edge of the iron and just set it on there, right? You can use steam also. I'm not going to do that because I'm on top of my my Sew Steady table. I don't want to do any steam or anything. Don't press this seam out. You need that center seam in order to line up some of the other areas. And then on this one, it's a little trickier. This is the one that goes the other way. You might want to flip this over, and right here, use your finger and kind of get this like this. Start it so that you can make sure the seam opens the way that you want it. Because I think it's hard for the iron to get in there and do that last little bit. So if you can kind of give it a little head start, you're going to have a better seam right there. Make sure they all go the same direction that they should. That's okay. So we'll just, get that last little bit. This guy was being ornery, going the wrong way. Why does this have to be folded? So Margie, that's a good question. So when we put the 4 patches together, we want the seams to nest so that everybody can lay flat. And that's going to help us put the blocks together more easily. And what I've devised is a way to do that. So you'll see the X's will have the little caps going in, and the O's will have them going out. So like if you see on this picture right here, on this cap, both of these seams are going to go this way towards the ring. On the X's, that's how they're going to be. On the O's, both of them are going to go towards this corner. And that's going to allow you to put each piece together so that they nest right here. I'm less worried about this. There is, you can kind of manipulate these outer rings to go different directions, but it's this one that matters, the melon, and that's going to give you the best press. So you're going to do some where they go towards the ring, and then the other ones will go towards the corner. And that's going to make each of those blocks nest. which allows you to put them together so much easier. So, okay, so we've got them one press this way, and these seams are essentially, they're all going to go that way now. And let's go ahead, we'll put our melon on. So again, our seam fold right there, let's make sure we have the correct fold. So we want to use that one. We'll start pinning him right in the middle. And you want right at that seam intersection right there. That's where he should be. And we double checked that we had the right amount on each side, remember? So we know that this will fit because this was trimmed with that number 4 and we checked each side. So on the inside, just a little tiny bite, just enough to hold at the center. And then we'll go ahead, let's see, we want to do it this way. The ring is the part that'll be on the top. So when we line it up, we'll line it up just like that. And then this is that piece that you can go ahead and wiggle that through and get that, you know, held in position. And then we'll do the same on the bottom. And you can see on these, they fit in there pretty easily. There's not a lot of difficulty. I mean, they actually just lay right there. I think that they kind of hang over on this side when you flip them up, and that part will end up being cut off. We won't need to worry about it though, but it does hang over, and that's okay. So does this seem like too much work? What do you think? It is a lot of work, I won't lie to you. But it's a quilt that, you know, if you've ever wanted to make, I think that sometimes when you see the wedding rings, they're done completely on the bias, like it's curve to curve to curve to curve. And the way that we're doing this one is you're making a 4-patch, and the curve is pretty shallow. So it's not really a difficult challenge to manipulate that bias and get it sewn in nicely. So that's one of the benefits of using this, and you can vary up the corners. So like, you know, this one where Leonie has done this, you could do alternating. You could do black and you can do white together, you know, on the same one. And that would have that seam, but that would be something that would allow you some more variation. And that would be a reason why you would want to cut these separately, different pieces. All right, so we put the melon on. The melon only goes on one side. Let's go ahead and we'll get that on. Oh, did I do it wrong again? I sure did. The melon goes on the inside. Oh, there we go. This is how it's going to look as we sew. This should fit in there pretty nicely. It's not really difficult to get it to go, but I put my pin on the wrong side. I don't know why I keep doing that. You'll get the hang of it. So we'll just get that basted in there. We do want these edges right here to be held as we sew those first few stitches. So just like we said before, we want to make sure that we have a leader before we start sewing. We want good stitches to be happening when we put our fabric in there. So always put that leader in there. Don't skip that step. It really makes a big difference. So I got it lined right up on my 1/4-inch guide. Take a few stitches. And now we can start getting these lined up. And a little bit more. I can see that little guy wasn't laying down, so I was going to help him. All right, and now we'll kind of pop this part up and let this part lay down and get our edges together. If we need a little help, I do want to get underneath with the pin first before I do anything else. So I'll pull the pin out, and now I can get this part a little better aligned, and I can hold that to get under the foot if I need to. I am so funny. I keep doing it the wrong direction. Let's see. Let's put this pin on the top. I want him to at least go through maybe 2 times so that he can hold that last shape. And then I'll just make sure these little edges are together, and we'll sew that last bit. And I just keep cutting off my leaders and bringing them back around to the front, those little leader guys. That lets me cut off that piece. All right, so there's our melon. So let's show you what we got so far. We'll kind of scoot these over for you. This is what you've got to do. The triangles are going to go on, and then the melon goes just on one side, and you can see he's pretty nice. Right now, this is pressed towards this outer side, and in general, the melon is going to follow the same press. Whatever side it's going on, it's going to be pressed the same way. So for us, we want it to go the same way. So we're going to just finger press it this way to get it started, and then we'll put the iron on it. Right after this is when we can put the triangles on, the caps, and I'll show you those next. We're almost there. All right, there we go. Get those to behave. So the side that has the melon is finished, and the side that has the triangles is the part that we're going to do next. So let me show you how they fit on. And I'll be the first one to tell you, I've put these on wrong a bunch of times. I've had to take them off. This is the square corner. The part that has this little curvature right here is going to curve right into that. So this narrow neck right here has to go towards the inside of the block. So I've done this. I've like put it like this. No, it doesn't work that way. Do it this way. So literally look at it like this and make sure if this seam's not open all the way right there, just finger press it like that. Just make sure it's open all the way because otherwise it won't fit well. And then you're going to just flip that over. And you can go ahead and start doing that same pinning, right? We'll line up this corner, and I can just put a little pin to anchor that. And this is curvy. It does curve just a little bit, not very much, but you can manipulate it just slightly to get these pieces to line up. So you see you got to flange that right there just a little bit. So make this part a line right there, and we'll pin it. That'll hold it in place. And then right here, we can just do that flange, and that'll make sure that those pieces stay aligned right there. So you can see these edges now, they're all lined up. So we'll start stitching up there, and we'll pull the pin out as we go. So let's go ahead and we'll look at the other side. So it's the same thing. Now, let's talk about, one other aspect. One of the things that I did really intentionally is I used batiks in order to sew the white and the black. And the reason for that is those are dyed fabrics that are the same on either side. So if I have a piece that is symmetrical, like the melon or the triangle or these caps, and I need 5 and 5 reverse, I don't have to worry about that. I know that I can flip it over and it's going to be the same on either side. And that's really important because, if you imagine if you cut a whole width of fabric, but you cut it and it was supposed to go the other direction, if you have a fabric that has a print, you can't easily do by flipping it. It won't go the right orientation. These are not interchangeable, but with the batik, I can flip it over and there's no problem there. So let's go ahead and we'll get these corners lined up here too. I got to pin this last corner, make sure that he's matching. So we'll just put that little wiggle of a stitch and flange him out just a little. We'll scoot this part over, and here we go. So we've got our little leader in there. It's pretty easy to just keep him aligned really nice and pull this out. If I need to flange him just a little bit, that's what I really like this little guy for, because he'll grip just enough, just a little bit, to get those edges to line up. And I can get him sort of under the foot that way, which is really convenient. So as we go, I'll pull the pin and get that last little bit stitched. And again, if I had a bunch of them, I would do tons of them, and then I would flip to the other side. But since we're just doing the one, we'll go ahead and we'll put our little leader in there. That way we can cut him and do the other side. So making sure we have our correct 1/4 inch. Now that right there, that pin is holding our place, and we're right inside of our 1/4 inch seam allowance. Watching that as the pin gets towards the needle, I want to make sure I'm pulling that out. I don't want to stitch over that pin. And then we'll put our little scrap in there. So right now, let's show you what we have. This is the last part of it, and it's the last piece of this X block. Okay? So we have 2 different pieces, and I'm going to flip them over, and I'm going to raise the camera up a little so you can kind of see the seam orientation. So right now, this seam is pressed out, right? This one goes this way. So these 2 are going to nest right there. So if this one goes out, this one has to come in, and that's the thing you're going to be looking for right there. Those 2 are going to end up going together right like that. So I want to make sure that I have this one pressed correctly. So both of these are going to go in, and that's the X, where they come in towards the ring. And then on the other one, they'll go opposite. Let's turn that steam off. I don't want to get any steam on my Sew Steady table. All right. So at this point, we've done all the work that we need to do, and our piece should fit together really nicely. So where we're at, this goes out and this goes in on that side. And this is where we have to pin match right there. So let me show you what it looks like on the inside. That right there, you're just going to be selecting your 1/4 inch. And usually right there, it's right in line with this little cut right there. So it should be like right about there. And when I pin through it, I'm going to look on this side and make sure I'm right through the seam allowance, right there on the inner part. And I'll just line it up right there. Okay, and I like these pieces right there. Make sure that the pin is straight like that. See how it's vertical? Get those edges lined up. And I want to put a pin on either side of that and hold that in exactly that position. This is probably the hardest matching part of the sewing, is getting these corners right here. I think everything else is pretty easy, but trying to get the melon so that you get just the right amount of white, just the right amount of the corner, and then you take that out. You can't leave that in there. So then you'll match up this one as well. When we sew this, we're going to leave this side flat, and this is the one that's going to flange around to match. So we'll match up the center. Again, a little bite for the center, and then we'll match this up as well. Oh, I went a little too far, I think. Oh, yes, I did. I matched up the wrong one. That one. can see right now, see how they kind of lay pretty nice right there? There's not a lot of excess fabric. They actually go together pretty easily. So we want to pin match this one as well. So we'll do the same thing that we just did. We'll use our 1/4 inch and just make sure that we are not catching the other fabric. See right there? I don't want to catch the orange. I want to come right through the seam and just make sure I don't have any of the other seam right there. And then right there, going right through that seam. So I'll make sure that the pin is vertical with these two, and you kind of have to like rotate them a little bit to get them to line up. See how they'll match real good? So then I'll put 2 more pins, 1 on either side, and that way I can pull that one out. So right there, make sure that he matches. And put these really, really close to that pin. This is probably the most tedious part of this process, is getting the melon to match right there. So these need to be pretty close, because if he can slip in there, he might try to. Oh, look what we did. Oh, let's see if I can fix that. I might be able to. We'll have to just pull that out. Just 1 stitch maybe. Hopefully he'll be okay, because we're going to stitch right there, so hopefully we'll just stitch him in. If not, I can go back and fix him later. All right, so right there we're going to be, kind of mashing a little bit, getting these aligned as we go. And we'll start at the other side, because we want this part that's fluffy like that, we want that part on the top. This part already is laying flat on the bottom. So it's the top part here that is already curving so much that we're going to manipulate as we go. So we're lined up right there, and I'm going to put my little baster pin in there and wiggle him. Get those corners aligned. And then let's sew. All right. Thanks you guys for sticking with me. I guess I know that this is a little of a longer set here. So we'll go ahead and let the needle hold everything. I'm right on my 1/4 inch mark right there on my throat plate. And I can use my stylus if I need to. I can get everybody lined up. And I'm just going to use that scant 1/4 inch right there. And I see that little bump right there, so let's make sure that he can go on the other side. Flip him around so we don't stitch him in. And here, go slowly as we're matching. We don't want to disturb those pins. So once we get to them, we can just pull that out. See how we have the little gap right here? So we have to just open this a little and start getting these connected right there. So that's what this little stylus is really good at, helping get everybody connected. So I do have my pin there, so I'll pull him, and then we'll go around. And then right here, we'll kind of flatten this up a little bit. You can use your knee lift, kind of get that excess fabric to lay down, and get these edges. They're lined right up. That wasn't too hard, right? That was just a little tiny bit of smushing to get them to behave. And then we'll line this up again. We'll kind of get the little bulk to go around the back. And we're right here at this part now, so now we're going to have to get this guy to come forward and kind of get him aligned right there. So we'll just gently ease that in. Pull that center pin out and make sure we're lined up. And we'll just get the last 1 or 2 lined up. And then these guys, as we work, we'll just keep making sure that they can lay down. And we're right at this pin, right where we've got all these pins coming in. So we'll sew slowly right there and kind of get right up to the pin, and then we can pull him out. A few more stitches to get to that other pin. We're right past the seam allowance, and now we can take this pin out. You can see these aren't quite aligned, so we can just loosen this up a little bit, and we can just give a little tug right there with our stylus, get those edges together. And then we're pretty much there. All right, let's get our little stopper here, our leader. We'll put him back under. So for all the pieces that we did pretty good. So this is our match right there. That looks pretty good, I think. I would be totally happy with that. And then let's see how we did on this side. Not bad, not as good, but not bad. So if your perfection quotient won't tolerate that, now you have a little seam hole that you can go back and rip out a few of those and repin that. For me, I'm probably good with that. I'm probably going to go with it. So let's show you the block, and let me show you that last press, because that is important that we press the last piece the correct way so that it does the X position. Right? So we've made ours to match up with our guide. So let's make sure that we have it aligned the proper way. Notice how all these seams are going this way. They're all pressing this way. So that last press should go that way too. I guess we got to flip him this way. Did I miss it? There we go. It's got to go that way. There we go. Right there. See this right here? This part is all going to go in. So on mine, each of the caps are going to go the same direction. So let's go ahead and we'll press that real quick, and then you'll see how it goes. So right here, getting this to lay down. Right there. So just hold it on there, let the iron do the work for you. Okay, and then once we get it over on that side, we can make sure everybody's open. If we don't have everything open, we can make sure that we get the last bit open. So let me go ahead and I'll pull up the templates and we'll show you the last pieces so that you can know all the pieces that we used. All right, I think we have one more. Thank you. All right. No, that one too? All right, so we've made our block. And I'm going to show you just a few more things, and I know you guys are probably had enough for the day, but we'll go ahead and put these out there. So this is piece number 1. I'll flip it over, right? And then piece number 2 is the cap, and piece number 3 we're using is the melon. So let's see, where did that go? Right here. So we use piece 1, 2, 3. Just like you would. This is set 1, 1, 2, 3, and set 4 is also in that set. So all of these pieces right here, this is set number 1. But you cannot make Scrappy with this one. We trimmed our ring with number 4, but we didn't make it with number 4. We made it with this number 7. And I didn't use number 8. I just made all of my pieces number 7. And then I used this both to trim in the curvature on the end of the ring and also to ensure that my ring was the appropriate size in case my stitching was a little wonky, right? So this is the first part, and you could make an entire quilt just with stitch 1, with number 1, with rings, or if you did 2, you can set 2, you can do it scrappy like we've done it today. I do want to show you one additional block. We're not going to stitch it, but I'm just going to pull it up for you to look at it. Can you grab the one right there, Daddy? The black one that's pinned? Yeah. and the other ones, the black and white. So just for convenience, I used a small locking ruler system, and this just allowed me to cut my scraps because it was smaller, it wasn't so bulky. But if you have 2.5 inch strip and you want to cut those with the strip cutter, you can, and you can make all of those just out of 2.5 inch strips for your little scrappy bits. So in the number 4 set, we need 1 ruler. This is the ruler that I used from the number 4 set, and it's number 12. And the way that they're initially used is just like this. I'll flip them over, where you have this piece, and you have a seam. Well, as we've already showed you, I don't really like that. So what I did is I decided I was going to make them with the ring as 1 piece. And you can cut this right out of that 7.5. You're folding it just like we did before, and you just put this right on the straight of the grain and cut the ring, and you would eliminate the seam right on this side, okay? And then you get this single unit, and you put your ring on it after you put the triangle on it, right? So it's the same pattern that you're doing it. It's just 1 ring. And when you're doing the graphic pieces, you're going to use that number 4, and you'll be able to cut the whole ring as 1 piece with that number 4, eliminating the seam in the middle. So you're going to end up with pieces that will have a lot less seam bulk by using this method. And this is not in Leonie's guide. Like I said, she's cutting them as individual units, and she's using, with the fabric pieces. And I'm essentially using those 7.5 inch squares for almost all of these units. And then for the plain squares, you're going to be cutting 8. So I haven't decided on the cost for the class. I'm still working out the details for when it will be. It's going to be at the end of February. And there's 18 different blocks, but there's really only 2 or 3 different major units that are part of those. Like the blocks are repeats of different things. So we won't have like 1 million classes, but I thought we might have 3 or 4 different Zoom sessions, and we'll work on them together. And if you're having trouble, then we can help make everything happen. I'll show you real quick just some of the documentation that I've got for it. Is the way that I'm setting it up is you'll know exactly how many blocks and exactly what the coloration will be, and whether it's an X press or an O press. It'll be just like this, and it'll tell you where does it go in which row and how many units do you need for that color. So these are the 2 sheets that have all of the blocks that are needed. So you can see like some have different color setups and things like that. So it is work to cut. It is a lot of work to cut. I cannot, hide that. I don't want to hide that. It's a lot of work. But I'll be working along with you, and we're going to end up having a group. So I'll put the videos onto the group. You can attend the class live, or you can attend it afterwards. And then what we'll have within the group is kind of a discussion option. So like if you are working at it on a time different than the group, but you experience this, maybe you can put a note in there, and I'll be monitoring it, but also your fellow classmates will be monitoring it, and then they can say, oh, this is what I did, or what do you think about that? And that way we can try and get a lot of synergy around the group and all work together. And it offers one additional aspect. I'll be the first one to admit I have some quilts that I never finished because I don't know, I got bored, or I got, nobody working with me, or the synergy wasn't there anymore. As quilters, we're naturally ADHD. But I'm hoping that with the organizational pieces that we're going to share, that will help you to be able to get through it. And we're going to be offering a king size, and I won't lie to you, it takes a lot of fabric. Definitely want black and white batiks if you're doing it my way. And also a version that is a queen. So you're going to need the Westalee wedding ring set number 1, 2, and 4 for sure. And so I'm going to show you one last thing, and then I'm going to offer my giveaway. So if you will share our post and like it. And is there a picture? There is, Rita. but I haven't, I'll have to grab it. So this is my organizational system right there, right? So each one of those would be bagged up to say, how many pieces do you need? So like you can say, okay, this is melon number 3, I need 50 white or however many. And you could write that on the bag. And then as you're cutting, you're gonna fill up that bag until you have the right number of pieces. And if you need X number of rings, this is not big enough, I'll tell you for our rings, but you'll make those and fill up the bags. And that way, once you have all of your units cut, all of those pieces ready to go, then you're going to do one more thing. And I'm going to show you over here. Oh, like here's my mess again, right? This is what happens when we sew. Like I have stuff everywhere now. Okay, right here, what's all this stuff down here? This is my organizational system. Each block and how many is written on the bag, and if I have everything to make all of those units, then there's no notes. If I'm missing something, it tells me what pieces am I missing, okay? And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna sponsor, if somebody's interested in participating in my class and they liked, commented, or shared, I'm going to be offering set 1 to that person. So I have not discussed this with my Society partners because I just decided that. So I will be talking with our giveaway queen on Monday. And I think we need to give it a few days for the video to percolate. So I will ask her to make sure that she shares it by Friday and picks the winner. Okay, so anyway, I'll be giving lots of tips, the pattern, individual instruction to a live class, and all kinds of organizational tips and assistance for getting you the best results that you can have. And I will post a picture of the full king size quilt in the comments because I do have a picture. And I didn't waste all these bags. All these bags are recycled bags that I have. I actually have a drawer of bags. So anytime that I have a nice clean bag, I just save it and I use it again. So I didn't just, pull these bags out and waste all these bags for all of this purpose. Okay. So set 1 is what I'll be offering. Thank you so much. I'm going to let you guys go. I hope you had a great time. And I know it was really a lot of work. I wish we had a better setup. Hopefully in the new studio, we'll be able to, kind of create that U station and have better camera access so that we don't have to keep switching, but hope you love it. And the quilt is really pretty. Oh my goodness. So I'll put up a picture in the comments if you want to see it. I'll put up a picture of the full quilt. All right. Thank you guys so much. I hope you have a wonderful quilting day and I will see you soon. Bye.